Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to the Ask Alice Show. Every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, your host, Alice Badler, answers everyday questions with her unpredictable, interactive, spontaneous, and engaging style. You can easily ask your questions or join the conversation by calling into the show or logging into the chat room on Blog Talk Radio. Alice's talented producer, Richard O., is waiting for you. From the smallest things to the deeply profound, the Ask Alice Show is the place to ask your questions and get real answers. Here's your host, Alice Badler.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am so excited to have you all here tonight. It is going to be a fantastic show. And you know what? I'm ready. So let's do it. Tonight, I want to talk to you about puppy love. Let me tell you about my little dog, Jax. He is so good at being in a relationship. He always asks for exactly what he wants, really nicely. If he wants to play, he'll come up with a toy. And if he wants love or cuddles, he'll sort of paw at me. Of course, I can't always accommodate him, but you know, he never gets upset with me. And the same is true in reverse. Sometimes I want to be with Jax, and he wants nothing to do with me. I mean, nothing to do with me, and I never take it personally. And sometimes, you know, he makes a little mess on the carpet, or I'll step on his tail by mistake, and we never hold a grudge against each other. This little boy is all about giving and receiving love. I think you all know where I'm going with this. And yes, life, it's a little different. It could be hard out there. Relationships can be hard. So this might feel a bit simplistic. But what if we just tried some of this stuff, just to see what would happen? What if we asked for what we wanted? Nicely. What if people said no to us and we never took it personally? What if we always allowed for people to ask what they wanted from us? And if we couldn't give it to them, that we find a way to say no in such a way that they never feel bad for having asked for it? And what if we give love just because we want to, with no grand expectations about anything in return? It's just a thought, Anyway, that's what's on my mind tonight. And now I want to know what's on your mind. So feel free to ask any question or make any comments. And now, Richard, I'm going to turn it over to you.
You're not expecting this, but you're talking about, puppy love. I mean, I'm a fool. I seem kind of like a guy who, might be not so good with kids, although I'm good with kids. But in terms of dogs, particularly dogs, cats as well, a dog can just bring me to my knees. That just unconditional, unbelievable. I've had labs. And when they come and, sit next to me, I used to have this lab that when it was stressful in the house, not due to me, but, just stress in the house, the lab would come over and sit so that she'd sit right up against my shin with her butt on my foot and look at me like, can't help me. This is not appropriate pack animal behavior. I don't know what to do. And just that, the direct communication that an animal can have is so unbelievable because it has no attachment. Well, sometimes they want a treat or a meal. However, they really are so unconditional. It just floors me the way they are willing to love that way, so deeply and so fully. I love that.
I know, and
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know, and it just got me to thinking about, although I think it's hard for humans to be totally unconditional, we could certainly learn a lot, about how to give and receive love the way dogs do. kind of a cool concept anyway, right?
I love the idea. I think that, one of the wonderful things about dogs is also I've worked a lot with animals who are in pain or have had surgeries, helping them. And the great thing about animals is they don't have the same kind of attachment to all of that we do. They're damaged. They have their own, okay, I'm damaged. I got wounded. Something happened. They get fixed. They're loving on everybody, and then they're over it. They don't walk around going, oh, look at me, I had a cast on my foot, isn't that sad? Or, they don't, they're so in the moment. I always think of dogs as just in the moment. I'm here, I'm now, am I eating? Are we going for a walk? What are we doing? We're doing nothing. I'm cool with that. No demanding. Well, occasionally, they do come over with a leash in their mouth and go, we're going for a walk now. Okay, that's cool.
Well, we can all be divas sometimes, Richard. I bet even you.
There's somebody, I know where you're trying to get me to go, but I have somebody in chat over here saying it would be nice to be able to give. It would be nice to be able to give and not worry about whether you can give all that is required. I always worry about giving because I worry the demand will be too much for me to handle.
I worry about giving. Well, that sounds to me that if someone is worried about giving because the demand might be too much for them to handle, it sounds to me that that's probably happened to them. I would say that's about boundaries. That's about setting boundaries, which is very difficult for us humans to do. Because sometimes, the person we're setting boundaries with doesn't take to it very well. But we have to do that. And we could do that nicely. And if the other person doesn't, respond nicely, that's kind of not on us. That's on them. So I think that's all that's about. It's a give an inch, they'll take a mile. Well, guess what? Don't let them. Right?
Well, is there a line in there between that and giving without attachment or giving without expectation? Or as you give unconditionally without, I'm giving unconditionally, therefore, there is no therefore, it's just you're giving unconditionally. That's what I think I love about dogs, is they give unconditionally.
Dogs do give unconditionally. And I don't know, for me, personally, there are times when absolutely I'm giving unconditionally. I'm giving a gift, I'm giving my love, I'm expecting nothing in return. But I think as humans, we do tend to expect something, not always in return, but whether it's a employer-employee relationship, a romantic, whatever relationship we're in, of course, to some degree, it's very difficult to let go of all expectation. So I think we have to manage that. That's up to us. That's our choice. We can manage that. But if we choose to give unconditionally, then we have to stay detached to the outcome of it. We have to choose to give unconditionally. So that's a choice we make.
We actually have somebody.
That was a great comment.
We have somebody in chat who's doing a follow-up to that saying, can humans give unconditionally?
I certainly believe that humans can. I think humans are capable of quite amazing things. But the work that it would take, the practice, what I call the inner work, somebody would have to want that very badly. And that's just not giving unconditionally. That's kind of anything, Well, as the weeks go by, we'll be talking about a lot of things. And anything you really, really, really want for yourself, you can attain with work. And you practice it every day, and you practice it every day, and soon it becomes quite natural. I'm not sure that anything we can do 100%. I don't know that anybody could be quite that enlightened or that evolved, but we could certainly get a lot closer.
Yeah, and we have somebody else. Now this has started a whole conversation in chat. This is great.
Great.
It's saying here that give because you feel the need to, not because it's expected of you.
That's a beautiful comment. Whoever made that comment, you're brilliant. That is an absolutely beautiful comment. and when you think about it, if we give because we think it's expected of us, then what's going to happen? Resentment's going to grow, all kinds of things happen. And that again comes back down to the boundaries we set and being able to say no nicely. We should only give what we want to. Unless, I mean, look, there's unusual circumstances. Somebody might be very sick and we love them, so of course we have to sometimes give of ourselves, even though it might suck us dry a little, depending on, the nature. But in general, yeah, you have to want to give it. So, that's, again, setting the boundaries, learning to say no, and the other person, I don't want this to come out the way it's going to sound, but however they feel, that's their problem, not ours. If we come with pure intention and the other person, that's their work to do. Right?
Yeah. I mean, yes. I got lost in thinking about that. Yes, that's right. Yes. That's their problem. I love that idea.
Yes.
I love that as a concept. Oh, my God. That's wonderful. I love that as a concept. It's their problem. Wow, that's awful. That's awesome.
It is. And again, it's, people can misunderstand what that means. That means they can be rude to people and it's their problem. I'm not talking about that concept. I'm talking about the concept when, again, we're good people in the world, our intentions are pure, but we have to take care of ourselves. People have this whole concept of it's not good to be selfish. Selfish and self-involved are two different things. We have to be selfish. We have to take care of ourselves first, because if we're no good to anybody. So it's very important to not allow people to take too much or suck us dry, but to do it nicely, again, to set our boundaries nicely, to set our expectations nicely, and then if other people can't deal with it, you bet it's their problem. They've got to figure it out. They've got to figure it out, and they will. And you know what? And they will.
Yeah.
I've had to do that with people.
Yeah. There's somebody in a follow-up here in chat is saying, my mom says that she thinks the basis of all relationships is need. If we don't need each other, there's no reason to have relationships.
Well, that's I never heard that one. And if that is her mother's truth, if that's the kind of relationships that her mother has, is all based on need, then that's okay if she's getting what she wants and giving what she wants. But I think relationships are based on a lot of different things. Mutual caring, mutual core value systems, just enjoying and loving being together. I don't think it's all about need. Because if it was all about need, we'd all just kind of be asking for what we want and giving nothing. I need, right? That doesn't.
I think it's all about. I think it's all about relationship. However, not need. I mean, I think what we're doing right now is our conversation and other callers is relationship. And for me, that's what makes me go to the microphone every day is relationship. Even though, this is a separate show, and disclosure too early, my exes would not say that of me. But that's because...
Sorry.
I know, that didn't mean to drop it right away, but okay, there it is.
Love it.
On the microphone, I'm very good at relationship. And so that's just what I'm observing is, as I look at since I'm looking at the sentence, to me, the sentence is, my mom says that she thinks the basis, it sort of alters it slightly, but it is all about relationships for me. I like the relating. I like that even going back in time when we sat around the fire and told stories and related to each other. We had gatherings, we had stories, we had, storytelling time. I like all of that, relating and communicating. Need, I'm not so hot on. I'm happy to help, but need, I don't know. Sorry.
Well, in relationships, there will be times we need each other, but I just had a thought about that. A perfect example of a relationship where we don't need is the way a parent feels for their child. We don't need our child to do things for us. We just love them. I mean, sometimes we don't love them so much. But that's not a relationship that's based on need. Obviously, when they're young and they're babies, they're all about needing us, and we're all about doing for them. So I think different relationships take on different sort of, they evolve the way they evolve. Because just like what you just said, Richard, look at all the different relationships in the world. You know what? I have a relationship with the guy behind the deli counter. We're relating every time I go there to get my ground turkey or whatever I'm getting. We have relationships with our employers. We have a relationship with so many people. I think people hear the word relationship and they go right to the romantic thing. So I agree with you. That doesn't resonate with me, but I believe that within a healthy relationship, we will absolutely need each other at times. And you know what, Richard? We're in a healthy relationship, you and I, and guess what? I need you. I could never do this show without you. And that's not a bad thing.
Not at all. No. I guess
there you
go. You're doing a great job for me of recontextualizing need, because need to me has more of a I need something from you, and I understand
exactly.
that. Yeah, that's great.
But I don't like the idea
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say I just don't like the idea of thinking that that's all a relationship is based on, is two people need or one person needing or whatever. But again, if that's working for someone, then that's their truth. And who am I to judge, right?
Yeah, I'll judge a little, but it's
all right. You can judge. I'm not allowed to judge. You could judge.
Okay. I'll be a little judgy.
Okay, good for you. Love it.
We have a caller. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready.
Okay.
Hey, this is
Go ahead.
Andy from Boston. How are you, Alice and Richard O?
Hi, Andy from Boston. I feel great. Thank you for calling.
Well, you know, you were talking about PuppyLove, and I live with 2 cats, and I have lived with dogs, and so I know that lovely, delicious, follow me where I go, eyes adoring me everywhere feeling that I can get from a dog. But then there's the cats, and the cats are very, very parallel relationship people. They'll come to me when they have a need. Otherwise, we move about the home wonderfully. It's kind of like I don't feel their need to return or reciprocate all that love, and I like that. Maybe I'm more like a cat than a dog, and I was wondering, what did you think of that?
Well, I think, again, all relationships are different, and that's a very interesting point because cats are definitely much more independent than dogs. The dogs have the ability to want too much from us. You know, they want a lot, and I don't really know if being a cat person or a dog person means that one person is more needy or not. Frankly, I'm a bird person. I adopted Jax a year and a half ago because of his situation, but what does that say about me? So I think perhaps just in your household, you just enjoy not having to interact every 5 minutes with your pet, that you love the interdependence, the independence that a cat, and they're lovely. Cats are great.
Well, and I think maybe sometimes people find that they like to live alone but be in a relationship with someone. Maybe it's because they like their alone time, their quiet time, their own solo space. And I guess, Alice and Richard, maybe that's something one needs to know about oneself.
Absolutely. I think we need to know a lot about ourselves. And choosing a pet's kind of hard for that exact reason. Because whether you're living alone or with a family, if you don't do your research and you're looking for an independent animal and you end up with a dog or something like that, that's not going to work out so good. But I agree with you. I think a lot of people that live alone enjoy life in the house. Just enjoy the idea, whether it's plants or an animal or fish or, well, I guess fish are kind of an animal. But I think that's a great point, Andy.
Thanks, Alice. Bye.
You're welcome,
well,
Andy.
I'll jump in for a minute about cats. I've lived both with cats and dogs, and I like both for different reasons. One of the things I like about dogs is I've never had a cat bring a leash up to me and say, let's go for a walk. So demanding, a little like, come on, stop what you're doing. I used to have a lab who I'd be sitting at my desk, and she'd actually come up on the hand on the side of me that was, I'm a double mouse person, so I have mice on both sides of my desk. And so she'd come up where the hand was on the mouse, and she would stick her nose up under my hand to lift it off of the mouse. And so that my hand would then be on her nose, and she'd look at me like, come on, dude, take a break. Get out. Go outside. Take me outside. And there's that engagement that dogs have like that I really like. I've also had cats who would, come lay on the keyboard. But, I like them both. They are very different personality types. Because as Andy says, you're just, with cats, it's like you're running on a parallel track, and occasionally you see each other. Oh, hi. But, yeah, I like them both for different reasons.
Is Andy still on the phone with us? Is Andy still on the phone?
I believe so. No, she went away.
Okay,
Sorry.
because I'm curious. I don't know if we've got anybody else in the chat room or on the lines, but I'm curious about something. So this is great, this conversation, but the point I was kind of trying to make was about, how do we ask for what we want in relationships with people, with humans? How do we not take things personally? Because that's pretty huge. That's something people have a really hard time doing. They want something, they don't ask for it. Resentment will build up, and that's a bit of a problem. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I agree with you completely that it's it's little tiny things that build up into piles of resentments. And then that's when, there can be some kind of blow up that is what seems to be out of nowhere. It's almost a PTSD kind of syndrome where you're like suddenly have an explosion. And that it's pretty, you kind of want to stay current. And I don't know how that works. I know in theory how that works, but having been in relationships where I've seen resentments build up from inactions on one of our parts, or just saying, hey, what about, I didn't like that, or, finding some way to contextualize it so it's said without offending anybody. I don't know what that, I don't know that technique, but I like the theory.
Yes, well, I do know that technique.
Okay.
I've done, again, the reason we have this show is because of the ridiculous amount of years that I've spent doing what I call inner work on myself, but also researching to find out how do we do that, Once I understood that I needed to do that, and I needed to allow someone else to do that, ask me a question, then I had to figure out, how do you do that without offending someone? Because we're talking to people with triggers, you're not really sure what you're going to hit there, so it's a little tough. If you want to, I don't know, let's say we're in a romantic relationship and you want more affection. How do you ask for that without offending the other person and making them feel like less than, that they're not giving you enough? So the way you really do that, quite frankly, is you start by telling them, well, first you start is make sure that they're in the mood for that kind of conversation. Make sure they're not distracted. Make sure they're happy and relaxed. And then you tell them how wonderful they are first. Tell them a couple of things you like about them. And then you could just say, sweetie, there's something you could help me with. I feel like I need a little more attention from you. And how can we do that? It's me. I just need more attention. And how can you help me with that? So you kind of, make it like that. Make it like you've got this issue, and how can you help me with my issue? And then you kind of bring out the side of them that wants to help you because they love you. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you're engaging them rather than, I don't like the word attack, but suggesting that they've done something wrong. You're engaging them in the conversation. Like, I'm wondering about this or I'm wondering about that. You're actually bringing them into the conversation rather than coming at them as a forceful, like, you're wrong and here's why.
Yeah.
That never works.
Instead of saying, look, you don't give me enough attention.
Well.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a very big difference between saying to someone, you do not give me enough attention, rather than saying, look, I have this problem. I feel like I need a little more attention. Can you help me? Like, how do we solve this problem together? That sounds so much different. So I think that's how we ask for what we want. And not taking things personally, that's just working on that. That's just practice. That's just when somebody says something to you, just pause, don't react, and just walk away or whatever you have to do to not engage and not react, and just decide in your head it's not personal. It's not about you. They had a bad day, whatever. So that just takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And I would suggest here that, one of the things that I just love is the 4 agreements, which are, 1, be impeccable in your word. 2, don't take anything personally. 3, don't make assumptions. And 4, always do your best. And there's a whole book written about it from Don Miguel Luis or Don Luis Miguel. But if you Google it, you could find it was just like a little paragraph that kind of explains that a little bit. But it's all of those take practice. And it's made a huge difference in my life to practice that daily. Because, again, I'm not there 100%. If I was that enlightened, Richard, I'd get to be a star in the sky. You wouldn't be talking to me. I am but a mere mortal. And you'll hear me say that quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So Andy in chat is saying, after 30 years with my darling man, I can still take things personally, even though I know better.
Yes, well, that's because that is hard, and you really have to practice it every day. There's tools out there, and we forget. Sometimes I forget to use them, and I'm like, wow, really? So there's a term I like. It's called detaching with love. And I think it's a bit of a hard concept to get, but it is. It's actually detaching from the moment, detaching from the emotions. And I add the with love because you don't want to detach in the negative way, but you want to detach from that feeling of taking things personally. And that's just practice. Andy, you can do it.
We have a caller, and I'll let them jump right in. Caller in 606. 6060. There we go.
6060.
Hi, Alice. It's Wendy.
Hi, Wendy. Nice to hear your voice. How are you?
It's great to hear yours. I love your radio show.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes.
Did you have a comment for me or a question?
Well, I'm just really glad that you brought up the 4 agreements because I think that they should be, standard for everyone to follow and really, live by because they're just so important. And I think it's key to just reflect sometimes that, especially the second one, just not to take things personal when people do things, because very often we do react, and there are triggers, And so it's a great reminder.
It is, and I appreciate you saying that, and I agree with you. I think it's a very short book. I think it's a very important book for all people to read and then to really practice. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I've been practicing that a lot, and I still, of course, again, we're human. Sometimes still take things personal. I still assume things. But I actually keep a card in my wallet of the 4 agreements so that I make sure to just read them quickly every day as I go through my day.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. I'm sure this will come up again in future calls because I agree with you. This is just way too important.
Well, thank you so much for bringing this up, and it's really an art. I feel not to react to something, especially when you have a vested interest in it, and it's so important. It's coming from your heart, and there's an attachment, and that definitely requires a lot of consciousness.
So how do you, maybe you could give everybody, how do you do it? What's your technique?
Well, for one, the first thing that comes to mind is just to be very grounded, and also to look at the other with understanding, seek to understand, rather operate out of your own ego.
Oh, I love that. That's actually, you just made such an incredibly important point. When we could take our ego out of the equation, which is also a very hard thing as humans to do, but when we could take our ego out of anything, that whole situation looks so different, don't you think?
Yes, and also take our own feelings of need and out of the equation and be detached. I'm going to use a term which I love, and I know you do as well, passionately detached.
Love that term.
From all expectations and results.
Yes.
And just be in that space of the divine, knowing that you'll be okay, or that it doesn't really matter what so-and-so says and does because it doesn't really affect anything in your life or who you are, and it's not about you, it's about them.
Exactly. It is. I mean, we always hear that it's not me, it's you, but you know what? It's not me, it's you. Usually,
exactly.
Usually if you think about it, if people really take a look at this, everybody's going around the world and they're thinking about their own stuff all the time. They're caught in their own stuff. You don't know what just happened to them. You don't know if somebody yelled at them. And typically, people really are in the midst of their own stuff. So when you're talking to them and they're relating to you, it's not personal. They're coming from their own angst, their own issues. And that's why I love the detached thing. I love it. Because if we can detach a little bit and step back and yes, have compassion and just step back a little bit. Now,
or
of course,
a lot. Or completely.
Well,
or just turn away and just say, okay, just, and not react, not form a judgment also. And just, if something doesn't feel right to you, then you can simply just, deal with that feeling on your own. Well, that's when I say just kind of turn away. If there's some discomfort in what someone's saying, if it triggers feelings of anger within you and or whatever, and you just want to take some space and just not have peace with someone. So that's also a very healthy thing to do.
It is, and I can tell just by talking to you, and also because I know you. But it takes work. I mean, people will listen to this, and they'll say, well, how do I get there? And it does take a lot of practice, and just what you said, not to engage. If you have to even say to the person, you know what, I need to walk away and think about this a little bit, whatever you have to do, it really takes a lot of practice. And I know, and you know from our own experiences, that if we practice these things really every day, it just seems very difficult at the beginning. It seems like we're constantly bombarded. But we get it. We get it.
Right.
And then life is so much easier.
It is. And one of the very common trigger points and that I think people can relate to so well is on an everyday life is at work, when you're dealing with different personalities. And it's so easy to get triggered if somebody's having a bad day, or if they want something, or a client wants something, or a customer wants something. And, you really have to be grounded, and you really have to listen to what they're saying and not take it personally, and, again, have that right amount of space and not get triggered, and deliver what they want. And so that's also, definitely an art of consciousness and a skill to practice, for sure.
It is a skill to practice, and you know what? That's the best place to practice, at work, because typically you don't have really close relationships with these people, so it's easier to detach. I think that is the greatest place to practice and practice and practice.
Well, it's
great.
interesting. It's interesting that you say that it's easier to detach, because let's say if you're in an office for many hours during the week, where you're there for more than you're at home, it's not that easy to detach, because there are things that come up all the time, and you're dealing with personalities, and often without a break, and you have to do things, and so that's actually, it's actually it is a great place, but it's challenging too, and that's where you develop the art, and you don't form judgments about people. You really try to seek to understand, which is that, I don't know if one of the 4 agreements reflects that seek to understand.
Well, I would say that probably the one of the agreements that I would say would probably address that is the one to always try to do your best. Because in these situations, what you're trying to do is be compassionate. What you're trying to do is to understand it's not about me, it's about them, so I don't need to engage.
Right.
I can walk away from that.
Right.
And that certainly is trying to do your best.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Alice, for bringing this up, and it's just wonderful to have this interaction with you, and I love your new show. It sounds so fabulous. So I just want to wish you all the best, and I look forward to listening to many more shows.
Thank you, and thank you so much for all your input. You're great. I really appreciate it, Wendy.
My pleasure. Okay. All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
I have a comment from chat. I have a comment from chat that I want to throw in first. We do have another caller, but I have this great comment from Tom. How much of a detrimental effect do you think taking these things personally has on our own personal well-being when we don't know how to let those things roll off us?
Well, a huge detrimental effect on us. If we're walking around taking everything everybody says personally, or even half, or even a quarter, there's just a lot of discomfort and angst in us. And most of us are walking around like that, by the way. Most people are walking around in angst and discomfort. Absolutely. And that is because they allow what other people say to them to have any meaning to them. Even, just a very simple example of that. Look at what happens if somebody's in a bad mood and they walk into, I don't know, the grocery store, the bank, or whatever, and because they're in a bad mood, they lash out at the checkout person. Wow, you know what? They could have just ruined that entire person's day. They don't even know that person. So the person that just got yelled at, they do not know this person from Adam. Talk about not being personal, and yet their day is ruined. I've seen people cry. So detrimental, you bet. I think this might be one of the most important things, this and negative thinking, which we'll talk about on another show. But I think that those are probably the two most important things that people can work on to find peace, if they could just do those two things, they would find so much peace and they would feel so much better. I did that answer Tom's question? Did that make sense even?
Yes, it did. I have a little. I want to. There is a caller I want to bring in right after this. That one of the ahas that I've had is that we look at each other and we're human beings walking around, relating or doing whatever we're doing, rushing places. And I've sort of taken on the view that we're really, we're human beings, but we're human beings within our own universal context. So I don't know that you have a child who's sick, or a puppy that's at the vet, or a husband that you're fighting with, or whatever. So I don't have your knowledge. I don't have your knowledge of your context of why you might be reacting badly in the world. I'm not saying that's okay. I'm just saying we're all just bubbles of context walking around, trying not to bump into each other too hard. And I think that's part of why you want to gain that sense of not having attachment to somebody else saying something stupid to you, because who knows where that's actually, you're just the person standing there at the moment.
And that's it. That's it. That's it. That's beautiful. And, Wendy and I were talking about where do you practice this so that you get so good at it so that when your husband or your wife or your daughter or somebody who you care deeply about is in a bit of a mood and does something that's hurtful, that then we can take even that not personally. We can get to that point. We can. And so that's a great insight, Richard, because that's it. Out in the world, we're always running into people with issues. And I think that's a great place to practice this, not taking things personally. Because even, people yell at you in traffic. Wow. There's another whole show in there, but that's a great way to practice.
Yeah.
I know you're pet peeve.
Somebody in chat is saying this very in a different way, but the same thing. Her whole statement is, I think what is so hard to deal with is that often when people emote on us, it has nothing to do with us. They don't see us. They see someone else. A trigger is something that reminds them of something that happened in the past. So she's saying the same. She's saying it in a way of, I'm looking at it as walking bags of context, and she's saying the same thing, that you might be the trigger of an event you're not even involved in, but you just happen to be at the right place at the right time to be a trigger. Yeah.
And wow, that happens so much in very close relationships. But that's exactly why this is such an important concept to get and to practice, because that's exactly it. What if somebody hits a trigger of yours? They didn't mean to hit your trigger. So I would think you don't want to be lashing out at them, right? It works both ways. So great. Loving the comments. We got some great people on here tonight.
Great comments, really. A lot of action happening in comments. That's great. And we have another caller. Just a moment.
Oh, great.
Caller from 8755.
Hi, Alice. This is Kayleen.
Hi,
How are
Kayleen.
you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Okay, so in listening to this great conversation, it took me back to thinking about when we ask our partner for things that we need. One of the things that I needed to get over was that huge fear of rejection, and also at the same time taking responsibility for my own thoughts and feelings during that time. And so I had to get over this fear of rejection.
Talking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had to get over my fear of rejection, and I think that's part of what has changed me in these last couple of years, and my relationship really moved into a different space, into what I like to refer to as a soul space, connecting to my partner's soul through getting rid of that fear, through being able to say, you know what, this is what I'm needing from you, and being able to get rid of that fear and then realizing without that fear, holy smokes, an entire door just opened up.
That is brilliant, and I'm going to ask you the same thing that I asked Wendy, because this is great information that we can pass on to each other. So for the rest of our listeners, how did you accomplish that? How did you get rid of that fear of rejection so that you could ask for what you wanted?
You know, there came a point where I had to decide, is this the relationship that I want to put the work into? So many times we don't want to put the work into it that it takes to maintain a relationship. And it has to be a mutual taking of responsibility, of, you know, basically taking on your own crap, for example. So what I did was I did the work on me first and realized that, you know, you said a good point earlier when you said, you know, people are always blaming someone else or something else, or it's always the other person's fault, right? Well, I was in that situation where I was one of those people that was like, well, it's not my fault. Hey, it's, you know, your fault. Instead of putting the blame on someone else, I paid attention and I realized my own faults. So through realizing my own faults, I was able to say, you know what? So what if I'm rejected? I'll deal with it. They don't have control over my feelings and my thoughts. I do. So I took charge of me and decided that that's how I was going to do this.
Well, that's fabulous, and you know, so many great points have been brought up that we can do truly entire shows on, because what you've brought up, which again is something that's so important, is the need for all of us to do the inner work, to take the responsibility, to change our own behaviors. Because what people are not doing is they're not taking a look at that themselves. They're not taking ownership. You know, we choose. Even if we end up in a bad situation, we made some sort of choice or we wouldn't still be in that situation. And I love that that's exactly what you did, Kayleen. You took responsibility. You looked at yourself. I don't love the word faults, but that's okay. If you do, I prefer behaviors, you know. We all have behaviors that maybe aren't serving us so great. And it's great on you. And I see it's people like you. I'm loving, you know, the quality of the people that are speaking, because what you're proving to everybody else that says, no, we can't do it, is yes, we can.
Yep.
Look at the people that are you're doing it. You're proof. You did the inner work, and I'm so happy and excited for you, by the way.
Thank you so much. And believe me, there's more work to do. There's definitely more work on the horizon, but it does start with you. And once you can get through loving yourself and learning how to love yourself, then you can move on to having these wonderful relationships, whether it's a loving relationship between you and another person and it's physical and it's beyond that, or if it's just a friendship. You know, the same thing all around. My family, my mother, you know, it's all there. It's all there for the taking, but I think you need to start with you first. Once you can get through you and your hang-ups, then I think you're on the right path.
You are on the right path, and you're absolutely right when you say there's always more work to do. As we get beyond each behavior or take ownership for this or get good at this, and something else shows up. But as we get better and better, the things that show up seem to get smaller and smaller, don't they? The things we want to work on.
Absolutely. Yeah,
so,
it does.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And so far, so good, Alice. This is awesome. This is awesome. Good job. Good job to both of you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Kayleen.
Thank you so much.
I have a comment from chat that I think is really great. I didn't know that this is where we're going to be going, but it's a great conversation. You know what I think is important? This is my theatrical rating. People have to learn to be
individual. Is this a comment?
No. This is a comment. No. I know. I didn't.
Okay.
It just happened in the theatrical. No, this is a comment. People have to learn to be individuals. People in relationships tend to absorb each other. It's easy to absorb their emotions and their fears and their annoyances.
Oh, that is a brilliant comment. We do have some. I can pick them, can't I, Richard?
I'd have dinner with these people.
How great would that be? You buying? But that is. I want lobster and steak. Anyway, that regardless of each comment is a little different. We keep talking about the same thing. The fact that people do take on each other's energy, if you will, absorb each other's bad stuff, good stuff, become one. That's, again, because they haven't done the inner work. They take things personally. It's all about finding out who you are. It's kind of what Andy said earlier about the cat. We're back to animals, is just discovering who you are as a human being. And I don't know, again, if that relationship would work for someone, if they would absorb into each other, then, good for them for finding that. But that wouldn't feel really healthy for me personally, to get so ensconced in another human being that we became one. But that's a great comment. I just I'm loving this. I'm loving where this went.
And I think that there's a follow-up comment right after that, which is so perfect, because it's Laura saying, and I think it's quoting the person who just hung up, so I can't see her name. Laura is saying, taking responsibility of your own crap. I love that. It's so true, but so hard to do. I think that fits together with the taking on of others' material. We all, let's all take care of our own crap first. Let's work on it, like that person said, take the first step by working on yourself. And for me, that's part of the, take responsibility for your own crap. Boy, howdy.
That is exactly what that means. And that's what, when I use the term inner work, which, again, I guess a lot of terms will hear me say over and over again, that is what inner work is. That's when we work on ourselves first. That's when and that is hard to do, because a lot of stuff comes out that we make judgments about. We make judgments about ourselves. We don't like that, so we'd rather push it back in than take a look at some kind of ugly stuff about ourselves. And again, for me, when I started to do this work, I realized the first thing I had to do was to take my ego out of the equation so that I could just look at this stuff without having a whole lot of emotion about it, because how else would I get rid of it? And that's the inner work. That's taking ownership for behaviors that no longer serve me. That's taking ownership for how I treat people in the world. And there's a ton of courses out there. There's a ton of stuff out there to help us, because that isn't something you can do on your own. But there's no way you could do that on your own. How would you know even where to start?
Yeah.
And certainly, eventually, we're going to have a website with a resource page exactly for this sort of thing. And in the meantime, before that, I think in the outro there's an email that people can write to, where our wonderful assistant Rachel could certainly help them with some courses or books, or lead them in a good direction. Start with that kind of stuff.
I will toss in that I see a lot of people excited about the dinner. I didn't mean everybody just relax. We're on multiple coasts. That's after we get picked up for year 2 from the show. Then maybe dinner.
Yeah. I'm glad to be in the middle, because we've got calling in from, I think we have someone in Canada, from a couple of different West Coast. This was not a huge amount of follow. You're looking a little local.
Your sound got kind of wonky, Alice. Are you okay over there?
Did it? Can you hear me?
Yeah, but you've got some kind of Darth Vader-y kind of effect going on. I don't even know what to call that effect.
Is it still?
A little bit, yeah. You might try wiggling the USB connector, Sometimes they get
All
a
right,
little
let me
wonky.
try this. That's weird. I didn't touch anything. Better?
Not quite. You still have a little bit of a, Star Wars effect going on.
All right, I might have to buy a new headset this week.
I guess so.
Yeah, I think it's time to buy a new headset. This one's 100 years old. So,
yeah, okay, at least. I have another comment for a chat that's in addition to that. Jess is saying Laura is saying about Jess's comment about, so true about Jess, we are told our whole lives to become one with another, to be the other half, to complete yourself with a partner, and yet that is not a great way to live.
That is kind of so true when you think about it. People are always saying we have to couple up, looking for soulmates. Boy, isn't that kind of a racket? I mean, so what, if we don't find our soulmates, we're nothing? That is a fabulous point. Because we are kind of told that in our society. So I can see how people get hooked into that belief system. Beautiful point, Laura. Boy, Laura's on fire tonight.
That's a great point. And then Jess has a point. This may be in reference to my earlier comment. What is a hard thing to accept is that relationships may have expiration dates. When we grow, sometimes we grow apart, but that is a good thing. That's my intonation, not hers. But that is a good thing.
I like when you do that. You just have to put a quote, say quote, and then end quote, so I know who's talking.
Right.
But I like your drama. But, here's the thing with life. Almost everything has sort of an expiration date. And, some of that's good. You go to high school, it ends. You go to college, it ends. You have a job, you move on to another one, it ends. And it is difficult because when we fall deeply in love with someone, that could happen. But I think we should never live in fear of that. That's what Wendy earlier, when she used that word passionately detached, the way that her and I have heard that word is in romantic relationships. And, of course, it's impossible to stay detached. But there's always that. Basically what that means is you cannot live in fear. You have to accept that we don't know the outcome. We don't know the outcome of anything, by the way, right? Don't we always keep hearing we could be hit by a truck crossing the street tomorrow? I think we have to let go of fear and just really live in the moment, just really appreciate and enjoy everything we have now. And I haven't always been so good at that. That's something I've gotten so much better in over the past couple of years. And it was because of experiences like that. Because I became afraid. And when you become afraid, you ruin everything. So, yeah, that's an uncomfortable truth.
I think it's, I am kind of riffing off of the term fear. In nature, animals in particular, when they get fearful, they go into a constricted state, and they do that because the survival thing. All the blood eventually rushes to the adrenals because they might have to have flight. And so that when we have this, chronic state of fear or worry, concern, or angst or anxiety or whatever word we want to use, ultimately it can be immunosuppressive. It can be, it's not, operating from that position of fear is not good for our systems. Our T cells, the immune system is all confused. It's, there's a lot of great research by the HeartMath Institute talking about this, where, being in a state of ease, the body flows naturally, easily. That's kind of what it's meant to do. We're not meant to always be in that oh my God, what's that? Although there is a lot of that.
There is a lot of that, and that's no, your 2 cents is gorgeous. I love that 2 cents, because I think what you're talking about in the animal kingdom, which I guess we are, but in the animal kingdom, the purpose for fear is because they're alerted. If you're a gazelle and there's a lion behind you, yeah, fear is a good thing. But, right, we don't want to be afraid of everything. We don't want to be afraid to love. We don't want to be afraid to give. We don't want to be afraid to take a job. We don't want to be afraid to ask for things. We don't want to live in fear. That's perfect, Richard. I love that. And
thank you. Thank you. And the visual to me is the classic, animals around the watering hole. And, they're all like cohabitating and everything's fine. And suddenly it always seems to be the antelope. I don't know why. Maybe I have this from a Disney film in my head. But it always seems to be some sort of hooved, attractive creature that suddenly the head goes up. And the next thing you know, they're gazoop. They're off and running. And there's that moment when the head comes up. You're fine as long as you're at the drinking hole all chilling and, okay, next to the alligator. We have an agreement for now. But then the head goes up, and that the adrenals kick in, and we're in flight and fight, and it's hard on the body, especially chronically.
I can't even imagine. And that's just another thing. I mean, everything we're talking about is how do we get there? And there are tools, and I'm a big believer in deep guided meditations to sort of get into our subconscious. To help us, and there's other tools, but it's really practicing it. Who wants to live like that, right?
Yeah. On the run like Ben Gazzara your whole life? I don't think so.
I don't know. He looked like he was having a little fun. No, I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, he did. That's true. Yeah, especially in the second version.
All right, but that was TV, right? We're talking about real life.
Yeah.
It's always a bit different. Well, I don't know if we have any other comments. It's 9:00. I'm thinking my time. Should we wrap this up, Richard?
Let me add this one last comment because it's everything that we've been saying. Jess is saying, I never thought about it, but relationships are perfect for enlightenment. We face all our fears of them: fear of loss, fear of rejection, develop communication skills.
Well, that is so true, and I still can't believe the brilliance on this show tonight. I'm so impressed that it's actually said, and I think there's probably scientific studies to back this up too, that the most healing, growth, trigger pushing, all of that, it comes in the form of those relationships, romantic relationships. Because that is where we have the most fear of loss. That is where people push at our buttons. That is where we're paying the price for what someone did to our lover years ago. So that's brilliant. That's it. I love that comment, and I absolutely believe that's true. But it also proves how much growth there can be if we stick it out. So couples that stick it out, that work it through, that not only have the best relationships, but each on their own have such great growth. So that was a fabulous comment.
I love your audience.
I love my audience, too. Our audience. The whole audience.
Okay.
All of us are a big hour. And I hope it continues, that the growth of our audience continues at this caliber. Wouldn't that be lovely?
Wouldn't that be amazing? I think so. I think this is the snowball effect. This is the beginning, and it just keeps getting better and better.
Oh, God, this really was a great show. Do you have any last comments, Richard?
I had a fun time.
Okay, I think...
that's it. I had a fun time. It was good for me. I need a smoke. Thank you.
I knew.
I'm kidding. I don't smoke, but it was good.
No, of course we know. That's Richard's line, everybody. When something's good, he always wants a cigarette afterwards, but he doesn't smoke.
And a cocktail.
Well,
yeah, absolutely.
And a cocktail, right? Well, I also think this was just a phenomenal show. I just had a great time, and I want to thank all of you that called in and were in the chat room and participated. We certainly could not have done this without you. And all of you could have been anywhere tonight, but you chose to be with me, and I'm honored. So I just want to say that until next week, I'm going to wish for all of us peace and love and gratitude and lots of joy.
That was really great. I want to throw in a couple of last comments that are just popping into chat now about Laura saying, yes, it did go fast. I can't believe it is over. Tom is saying, thanks for having us. Jess is saying, see you next week. And Laura sends big twinkling hearts. So I think that says it. That's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Love you guys. Really. Thank you all so much. It was just perfect. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another lively conversation on the Ask Alice Show. Alice loves to connect with her listeners, so please join the Ask Alice Show Facebook group, where you can keep the conversation going and post questions for future shows. And be sure to stay tuned into the show by clicking the follow button right here on Blog Talk Radio and by subscribing to the podcast on iTunes. If you have a high-quality product or service you'd like to advertise with the Ask Alice Show audience, please email Alice's assistant, Rachel, at info@AskAliceShow.com. Until next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, keep asking those questions.